Okay, so you want to dive into hydrogen production. Everyone's talking about it, right? Clean fuel of the future, that's what we hear. But how much of that is hype? That's what we're looking at today.
Right.
You sent over a study on the different methods of hydrogen production, which I have to say, color coding everything actually makes this kind of fun.
Mm-hmm.
By the end of this deep dive, we'll all be fluent in hydrogen hues, from gray to green and beyond.
Definitely. And it's important to understand those nuances because when people talk about hydrogen's potential, they often gloss over the how.
Exactly. It's not like we can just scoop it up like we do with fossil fuels.
Right. We have to produce it. And those production methods are what determine its environmental impact, its cost effectiveness, the whole 9 yards.
Okay, so let's start with what seems like the most common way to make hydrogen. Gray hydrogen.
Yeah, gray hydrogen is kind of like the incumbent. It's what we're mostly using right now.
But if it's so great, why are we even bothering with other colors?
Well, gray hydrogen is made using a process called steam methane reforming, or SMR for short. Basically, you take natural gas, which is mostly methane,
Okay.
and you use steam to separate the hydrogen from the carbon in the methane. Relatively straightforward. And we already have a lot of the infrastructure in place for natural gas, so it's currently the cheapest way to produce hydrogen on a large scale.
But there's always a but, isn't there? It can't be that easy. What's the downside of gray hydrogen?
You're right, there is a catch. The big one is that it still relies on fossil fuels, which means it's still pumping out a significant amount of carbon dioxide.
And that kind of defeats the whole purpose of a clean fuel, doesn't it? So using gray hydrogen is like choosing a slightly less polluting gasoline.
In a way, yes. It's a bit of a trade-off. We
Okay.
get the hydrogen we need, but we're still contributing to the problem we're trying to solve.
Not ideal. All right, so that brings us to blue hydrogen. Is that an attempt to clean up gray hydrogen's act?
Exactly. Blue hydrogen takes the same basic process, that steam methane reforming,
Okay.
but it adds another step, carbon capture and storage, or CCS.
So instead of letting all that CO2 escape into the atmosphere, we capture it and store it somewhere else.
Yeah, essentially. The idea is to trap the CO2 and either store it underground or find ways to use it in other industries so it's not just adding to the greenhouse effect.
Interesting concept. So is this like a Band-Aid on a bigger problem? Like, is this really sustainable in the long run?
It's a good question, and the jury's still out on that one. CCUS technology is still quite expensive, and scaling it up to handle the amount of CO2 we're talking about is a huge challenge. It's
Yeah.
definitely a step in the right direction, but it's not the silver bullet some people might hope for.
So blue hydrogen buys us some time and reduces emissions compared to gray hydrogen, but it's not a perfect solution.
Right, it's a sort of bridge technology maybe, while we work on developing cleaner options.
Okay, so gray hydrogen is the status quo, blue is a step up, but what's the ultimate goal? What about this green hydrogen I keep hearing about? Is that the real deal?
Green hydrogen is definitely positioned as the ultimate goal, the holy grail of clean hydrogen production. And what makes it different is that it doesn't use fossil fuels at all.
Really? So how do we get the hydrogen then?
Green hydrogen uses renewable energy sources like solar, wind, hydro, things like that, to power a process called electrolysis.
Electrolysis, right. So that's where we use electricity to split water molecules into hydrogen and oxygen. And if that electricity comes from renewables, then the entire process is clean.
Precisely.
Ah.
No carbon emissions from start to finish. And that's why green hydrogen is seen as so promising. It's the only hydrogen production method that has the potential to be truly sustainable in the long run.
It all sounds great on paper, but I imagine there are challenges with this method too. What are the roadblocks to making green hydrogen the go-to option?
There are definitely challenges. The biggest one right now is cost. The technology for electrolysis, especially at the scale we need it, is still quite expensive. Plus, we need to significantly ramp up our renewable energy infrastructure to produce enough clean electricity to power the whole process. We need way more solar panels, wind turbines, you name it.
That makes sense. It's like we have this incredibly promising recipe for clean energy, but we need a bigger kitchen to cook it all up.
I like that analogy. That's a good way to put it. The good news is that governments and companies around the world are starting to invest heavily in green hydrogen, which is really encouraging. They're realizing its potential, and that investment is driving down costs and leading to technological advancements.
Okay, so green hydrogen is definitely something to keep our eye on. It might be a bit further down the road, but it has the potential to be truly transformative.
Definitely. And speaks of transformative potential, there are a couple of other colors on the hydrogen spectrum that are worth mentioning. Turquoise hydrogen and pink hydrogen. They're still in the early stages of the development, but definitely interesting to consider.
Turquoise hydrogen, pink hydrogen. This is getting interesting. What are those all about? Tell me more.
Okay, so turquoise hydrogen first. This one aims to produce hydrogen from natural gas, like gray and blue hydrogen, but without any CO2 emissions as a byproduct.
Wait, so we can use natural gas and still have zero emissions? How is that even possible?
It's possible because of a process called methane pyrolysis. Instead of burning the methane in natural gas, which releases CO2, we heat it up to extremely high temperatures without oxygen. This causes the methane to decompose or break apart into two things: hydrogen and solid carbon.
Okay, I'm following so far. So we get hydrogen, which is what we want, and solid carbon. And because we're not burning anything, there's no CO2 released.
Exactly. The challenge with turquoise hydrogen lies in making the process commercially viable. We need to find economically feasible uses for all that solid carbon that's produced, and the high temperatures required for methane pyrolysis are energy intensive. So finding sustainable ways to power the process is key.
That makes sense. It sounds promising, but like any new technology, it needs time and research to overcome those hurdles. So what about pink hydrogen? I'm intrigued. What makes this one unique?
Pink hydrogen, also sometimes called purple hydrogen or red hydrogen, is made through electrolysis, just like green hydrogen. The key difference is the source of electricity used to power that electrolysis.
Let me guess. It's not from solar panels or wind turbines, is it?
You're right. Pink hydrogen relies on electricity generated from nuclear power plants.
Ah, okay. So we're still splitting water molecules to get hydrogen, but the energy source is different. And of course, nuclear power comes with its own set of pros and cons.
Precisely. Advocates for pink hydrogen argue that nuclear power is a reliable and low-carbon source of electricity, making it a viable option for producing clean hydrogen.
That makes sense, but then there are also those concerns about nuclear waste disposal and the risk of accidents, right?
Got it. Those are valid concerns that need to be addressed. And then there's the issue of public perception. Nuclear power can be a controversial topic, and those concerns can impact the development and adoption of pink hydrogen as well.
Right. So with pink hydrogen, it's not just about the technology itself, it's also about navigating those complex social and political factors.
Absolutely. And that's something to keep in mind with all of these different hydrogen production methods. It's not just about the science, it's about the economics, the politics, and ultimately what each society values and prioritizes.
So much to think about. It's like a puzzle with so many different pieces. But hey, that's what makes these deep dives so interesting, right?
I agree. It's about connecting those dots and understanding the bigger picture.
Well said. This has been a fascinating deep dive into the colorful world of hydrogen production so far. We've covered a lot of ground, from the familiar grays and blues to the promising greens and even the more experimental turquoises and pinks.
Absolutely. And what's fascinating is that there's no one-size-fits-all solution here. The best approach to hydrogen production is going to vary depending on local resources, infrastructure, policy decisions, and societal priorities.
Exactly. It's about finding the right balance, which is never easy. But by understanding these different methods, we can start to have more informed discussions about what that balance should look like.
Precisely. And that's what's so exciting about this field. It's not just about finding the right technology. It's about figuring out how to create a more sustainable and equitable energy future for everyone.
I love that. And for our listeners who are just joining us for this deep dive into the world of hydrogen production, don't worry, we've got you covered. We've been breaking down the different methods for producing hydrogen using a color-coded system that makes it super easy to follow along.
Exactly. Think of it like this. We've got our grays and blues, which are kind of like the workhorses of today. They get the job done, but they still rely on fossil fuels to some extent.
Right. And then we've got green hydrogen, which is like the clean energy superstar powered entirely by renewables, but still facing some hurdles in terms of cost and scalability.
Exactly. And let's not forget about turquoise and pink hydrogen, the up-and-comers, with the potential to shake things up, even though they're still in their early stages of development.
Precisely. So no matter what your level of knowledge about hydrogen is, we've got something for everyone in this deep dive. We're breaking down the complexities, exploring the trade-offs, and looking ahead at the exciting possibilities that lie ahead as we transition to a cleaner, more sustainable energy future.
Exactly. So if you're interested in understanding the nuances of hydrogen production and why it matters, this is the deep dive for you. We'll be back after a quick break to delve even deeper into the world of hydrogen, exploring the potential benefits and challenges of this versatile energy carrier. Stay tuned.
Okay, so we've talked about the different shades of hydrogen, but how do they actually, you know, work in the real world? What are the benefits of using hydrogen as a fuel source?
That's the exciting part. Hydrogen has the potential to really shake things up across a lot of different sectors.
Okay, like what? Give me some examples.
Well, for starters, think about transportation. Right now, most of our cars, trucks, and buses run on gasoline or diesel, which are major contributors to air pollution and greenhouse gas emissions.
Yeah, not exactly environmentally friendly.
Right. But with hydrogen fuel cell vehicles, the only byproduct is water vapor.
Wow, so zero emissions from our vehicles. That would be incredible.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's not just cars. Hydrogen could also revolutionize public transportation, shipping, even aviation. Imagine airplanes powered by hydrogen. It could significantly reduce the carbon footprint of those industries.
Okay, that's huge. So transportation is definitely a big one. What else? What other industries could benefit from hydrogen power?
Well, another major area is electricity generation. Right now, a lot of our electricity comes from burning fossil fuels, which, as we've discussed, is problematic.
Definitely.
But hydrogen can be used in fuel cells to generate electricity cleanly and efficiently. Plus, it can be stored for long periods, which makes it a great option for balancing out the intermittency of renewable energy sources like solar and wind power.
Oh, I see. So we could use hydrogen as a sort of energy storage system, like a giant battery, to make sure we have a reliable power supply even when the sun isn't shining or the wind isn't blowing.
Exactly. It could be a game changer for the transition to a cleaner, more sustainable energy grid. And beyond transportation and electricity, hydrogen can also be used in a variety of industrial processes that currently rely on fossil fuels, like steelmaking and ammonia production.
So it's a very versatile energy carrier.
Very much so. It has the potential to decarbonize a wide range of industries that are difficult to electrify directly.
Okay, so we've got cleaner transportation, a more sustainable energy grid, and even greener industrial processes, all thanks to hydrogen. But let's be real, if it were that easy, we'd already be living in a hydrogen-powered world. What are some of the challenges that are preventing us from going all in on hydrogen right now?
You're right, there are definitely challenges. Cost is a major one, as we've discussed. Producing, transporting, and storing hydrogen, especially green hydrogen, is still relatively expensive compared to using fossil fuels.
Right.
And then there's the infrastructure issue. We need to build out a whole new infrastructure for producing, transporting, and storing hydrogen on a large scale. That requires significant investment and coordination.
That makes sense. It's like we're switching from one type of fuel to another, but we don't have the gas stations or the pipelines in place yet.
Yeah, it's a bit like that. But just like with any major technological shift, those challenges present opportunities for innovation and collaboration. And the good news is that momentum is building. Governments and companies around the world are investing heavily in hydrogen technologies, and we're seeing promising breakthroughs all the time.
Well, that's encouraging. So it seems like the future of hydrogen is bright, but we're not quite there yet.
Exactly. It's a journey, not a sprint. But by understanding the potential benefits, as well as the challenges, we can make informed decisions and work towards a cleaner, more sustainable energy future.
I like that. So we've talked about the colors, the benefits, and the challenges. But what does all of this mean for the average person? Why should they care about hydrogen?
That's a great question. And it's important to remember that the transition to a hydrogen economy won't just happen overnight. It's going to require a collective effort from governments, industry leaders, and, yes, everyday citizens.
So how can people get involved? What can they do to support the development of hydrogen technologies?
Well, for starters, stay informed. The more people understand about hydrogen, the different production methods, the potential benefits, and the challenges, the better equipped they'll be to engage in informed conversations and advocate for policies that support a cleaner energy future.
That makes sense. Knowledge is power, as they say.
Exactly. And beyond staying informed, people can also make choices that support the transition to a hydrogen economy. If you're in the market for a new car, consider a hydrogen fuel cell vehicle if it's available and feasible for you. Support businesses and organizations that are investing in hydrogen technologies and advocating for clean energy policies.
So it's about making conscious choices that align with our values and contribute to a more sustainable future.
Precisely. Every little bit helps. And as more people demand clean energy solutions, it creates a ripple effect that can drive innovation and accelerate the transition to a hydrogen-powered world.
Well said. So to wrap things up, what are some key takeaways you want our listeners to remember about the potential of hydrogen?
I'd say the biggest takeaway is that hydrogen has the potential to be a game changer in the fight against climate change and the transition to a more sustainable energy future. It's not a silver bullet, and there are still challenges to overcome, but the possibilities are incredibly exciting.
Absolutely. And as we've discussed today, understanding the nuances of hydrogen production, the different colors, the benefits, and the challenges is crucial for making informed decisions and shaping a cleaner, more sustainable energy future for everyone.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a fascinating field that's constantly evolving, so stay curious, stay engaged, and let's work together to unlock the full potential of hydrogen.
I couldn't agree more. It's been a fascinating deep dive into the world of hydrogen production. But before we wrap up, I have one final question for you. With all these different colors and technologies, what does the future of hydrogen production look like to you? That's a big question. Where do you even begin to answer that? It seems like there are so many possibilities, so many different directions this could go.
You're absolutely right. It's a dynamic field. If I had to make a prediction, though, I'd say the future of hydrogen production is going to be diverse and adaptable.
Diverse and adaptable. What do you mean by that?
Well, I don't think there will be one single winner in the hydrogen race. We'll likely see a mix of different production methods, each suited to different regions and applications.
So, like, some places might rely more heavily on green hydrogen because they have abundant renewable energy resources, while others might use a combination of blue hydrogen and CCS to decarbonize existing infrastructure.
Exactly. We might see turquoise hydrogen taking off in areas with access to natural gas and a need for that solid carbon byproduct. And perhaps pink hydrogen will gain traction in regions that are already comfortable with nuclear power.
So it's not about picking one color and sticking with it. It's about finding the right mix for each context. It's about being adaptable and responsive to local conditions and needs.
Precisely. And I think we'll also see a lot more innovation in terms of how hydrogen is transported and stored.
Because right now, those are some of the biggest challenges, right?
Exactly. But there are researchers working on some really cool solutions, like using existing natural gas pipelines to transport hydrogen or developing new materials for storing hydrogen more efficiently.
Wow, that's fascinating. It sounds like the future of hydrogen is full of possibilities.
It really is. And that's what makes it such an exciting field to be following right now. We're on the cusp of a major energy transformation, and hydrogen has the potential to play a key role in shaping a cleaner, more sustainable future for generations to come.
I love that. It's a message of hope and possibility. We've got a long way to go, but by working together and embracing innovation, we can create a future where clean, sustainable energy is accessible to everyone.
Well said. I completely agree.
Well, this has been an incredible deep dive into the world of hydrogen production. From gray to green, turquoise to pink, we've covered it all. We've explored the different production methods, the potential benefits, the challenges we face, and most importantly, what we can all do to support the transition to a cleaner, more sustainable energy future.
It's been a pleasure joining you on this journey. And remember, knowledge is power. The more we all understand about these technologies and the choices we make, the better equipped we'll be to create a brighter future for everyone.
Beautifully put. A huge thank you to our expert for sharing their insights and expertise with us today. And to our listeners, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the world of hydrogen. We hope you've learned something new and feel inspired to keep exploring the fascinating world of science and technology. Until next time, keep asking questions, keep learning, and keep diving deep.